through a different format, or through a different scenario, if you will, so that people can start relating to the story.
Awesome. That's great that you found the story to work with. I'm just not a big fan of golf, so sorry. I guess I won't be sharing his excitement there. So you're. Hi, I'm Kyle Werkerly, certified professional ghostwriter. I'm glad you're listening as I welcome industry experts to share stories of lessons learned the hard way, overcoming professional hurdles, turning experience into actual knowledge, and how to connect with your target audience. This is the Career Challenges Podcast. Welcome to the Career Challenges Podcast, and my guest for this episode is Mary Henderson. Mary Henderson is a personal branding and social selling specialist. So Mary, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kyle. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So personal branding, I feel that's a big thing right now. You know, a lot of us are online. Everyone is trying to kind of make their mark, especially in the digital space, because now business, I feel, is almost exclusively going to be done online, at least for the foreseeable future, obviously, just the way the world is right now. So from your perspective, as an expert in your field, how should one kind of approach personal branding? What is the mindset that they should have?
I think that there's a couple of things that I want to talk about, in terms of personal branding. The first thing is that it is a cliche phrase. Everyone seems to be using it so loosely, and fair enough. Where on LinkedIn, people will say, build your personal brand, and relate that to their LinkedIn profile. Influencers who deem themselves as influencers are also talking about, how to actually, raise the profile of your personal brand. I've been doing this for a really long time, and I also came face to face with personal branding 20 years ago. And over the years, I've been able to really define it for myself, what it really means. And for me, it's a business. You are the business. The human being, the individual, becomes the business. It's not a bricks and mortar. It's not a product. It's not a service. You are the business. People want to deal with you. They want to speak with you. They're not wanting to buy a product and bypass you, the human. This is a human business. And it's probably the best way to start this idea of unpacking what your personal brand actually looks like and feels like. So I think, Kyle, that needs to be the starting point, because if we look at it from another angle, where influencers are trying to portray themselves as personal brands, most of them are not influencing anybody. And I would say a large proportion of them, I'm talking even a high 90%. These are people that want to be famous. They want to get rich quick. They want to get famous quick. And social media is a great way to do that. It doesn't mean that you're actually influencing anybody. For me, I stay away from that idea of personal branding, because that's, to me, danger territory. We really need to come back this way and ask ourselves, hey, why am I doing this? What is it that I want to create in terms of my brand essence and story and promise? And how do I start that based from a standpoint of being a business?
Definitely. It almost sounds like the moment you name it, it goes away,
Exactly. And the thing is that, exactly, and that's because it's become a cliche. It's this loose phrase that people are like, hey, I'm building my personal brand. And when I talk to prospects, a lot of them say, hey, I've engaged such and such to help me with my personal brand. And my response is, okay, well, what are you going to do with it now? You've got the personal brand. What are you doing with it? Because if it can't be commercialized, it's just another shiny object. And that's what we have to understand. We've got to discern the difference.
So you mentioned commercialize it, and we'll come back to that. But, even if you don't want to say this is my brand because you're worried, it's going to disappear the moment you say its name, you still have to be thinking about it, though, right? So I guess what is a key question or a key kind of approach to that, so that way you're still kind of building that personal brand without saying, well, this is my personal brand, as if, you're highfalutin in that way.
Well, you're not actually, anyone that says this is my personal brand, I would say that's a major red flag.
True.
What I think we need to really understand behind the essence of a personal brand is really simple. It's, what problem can I solve? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really the starting point. If you can't solve a problem, then you can't be a personal brand, because what is it that you're selling? You can't sell air. These people that want to be personal brands because they're desperately seeking fame, even they are selling air. They're not actually selling anything to anybody or solving a problem. If you can't
Mm-hmm.
solve a complex problem, and if you can't wrap a solution around that is tried and tested, then how do you build a personal brand? Certainly in the work that I do, I don't work with people who want to become famous. I work with people who are genuinely specialists in their area, and they're trying to package that and position themselves as a specialist in an area that they know for sure, so they can target a very specific audience. And then we wrap the language around that, so that audience actually understands that tribal language.
Definitely. And so you'd mentioned commercialize, and then you also said solve a complex problem. Are those kind of mutually exclusive? If you're solving a complex problem for somebody, you're obviously commercializing what you know.
They go
Am I
hand in hand. They
okay?
have to be, yeah, they're a partnership. If you can't solve a problem, you can't commercialize your business. I mean, it just goes back to what I was saying. You can't commercialize air. You've got to be able to
Mm-hmm.
position yourself as an authority, as the go-to person for that area that you can solve. Because think about the situation we're in right now, Carl. There are so many people out of a job, for example, and there's a lot of
Sure.
senior executives that are highly knowledgeable people, like really knowledgeable. And, there's a lot of intellectual property within that knowledge. Now, there's a perfect opportunity there for somebody to actually look at that knowledge and ask themselves, what problem can I solve based on this knowledge base? And there is a problem that can be solved. And then once that's identified, it's almost like you reverse engineer it. You look at your knowledge, you look at the problem you can solve, and then you're trying to find the audience that actually needs that problem solved. So all of these moving parts, and in my personal branding methodology, there's 24 moving parts to take an
Wow.
idea into actual commercialization. And because it's a serious process for people who want to take it seriously.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And so if somebody were to approach you and say, I'm ready to commercialize my knowledge, are you kind of listening or kind of paying attention to how they present themselves? And I don't want to say judging, but I guess, are you analyzing, are they really at that point where they're ready, or are they just kind of, hoping that you'll get them to that fame stage?
In my opinion, there is no fame. I think that what it is that as I said, there's a lot of moving parts. The first part to the process has got nothing to do with the knowledge base. It's actually got everything to do with the human being and how they look and act in their natural state, because and essentially that's the personal branding foundation. It's, what do you look like in your natural state? Now, do skills come in that, are skills incorporated in that equation? Absolutely. Their
Hmm.
abilities, absolutely. Their gifts and talents, for sure. So all of these attributes are unpacked and then packaged so that an individual can actually see, wow, this is what I look like in my natural state. That's what we want to work with. We don't want to work with who you want to be. We want to work with who you are. And this is why personal branding is so dangerous, because most people want to become someone that they're not. I want to be like Kim Kardashian. I want to be like Grant Cardone. I want to be like, instead of saying, I will never be like that. This is who I am, and I need to work with these assets because this is a part of who I am at a DNA level. That's what makes me authentic, right?
Hmm.
My authenticity is based on who I am, at that DNA level, not who I want to be or not the story that I want to tell tomorrow on LinkedIn. This is really about building a very solid foundation that then links to all the other moving parts that form the business structure, the sales funnel, the lead magnets, if there's an online course, a workshop, there's so many ways that knowledge can be packaged. But the personal branding bit is actually the very first stage, because that's the foundation. It's like when you're building a house. Without the foundation, the actual house will fall apart.
Yeah, very true. Yes, I've seen that happen.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
somebody tried to sell me a house without a foundation too, and I decided, nope, that's not for me. Um, so you'd also mentioned social selling specialist.
Mm.
I'm glad I didn't mess that up. So does this mean specifically on social media, or is there kind of a larger umbrella that fits under?
Well, the thing is that when I look at personal branding and, and then packaging that into an actual framework, which essentially becomes the business, that the next part after that is, how do we actually generate leads? How do you how then do you become the authority? How do you then put yourself out there so that you can be seen and so that you can be heard? And this goes hand in hand with personal branding, may I say. So personal branding and social selling is the perfect marriage, because you've unpacked who you are, you've unpacked what you stand for, you've unpacked the business proposition and the offer and the solution, and now you've got to put yourself out there. So social selling for me is, especially in the B2B space, LinkedIn is the best platform to be able to
Hmm.
start that conversation with your prospects, and also take them on that journey of get to know me, get to like me, get to trust me through your content. And then of course there's the other side of that coin, which is connecting with with your target audience on social media so that you can start that conversation. Now I do this on LinkedIn and on Instagram. Okay. I do my social selling strategy is exactly the same on both of these social media platforms. I do not divert. And what happens is that you build your profile as the go-to specialist incrementally every single day. And then people start to get used to the conversations that you're starting on these platforms. Why? Because you continue to stay in your lane. When you understand what your personal brand stands for, then you can be very clear on what your lane looks like. And you've constantly got this consistency happening day in, day out. So the social selling bit is essentially generating noise around, or I shouldn't say noise, it's a pull strategy. It's actually being able to pull the right people
Hmm.
towards you so that you can start a conversation, not push. So actually you're eliminating a lot of the noise because you're just staying in that lane, and that is all you're talking about. You're not kind of diverting left, right, and center. You're not getting on there and talking about any story randomly. It's strategic and it's deliberate, and that's how you draw people in that essentially become leads.
Definitely, definitely. So you mentioned LinkedIn and being familiar with that. I've been posting a lot on LinkedIn. I'm getting a lot of views, but yet I still feel I'm not quite grasping all the data that LinkedIn is offering, even on a free profile. I'm not using premium in any way, but I have noticed there's the social selling index, the SSI number,
Yeah.
and I've looked at that and it says, oh, you're in the top 12% of your personal network, that network you've built there on LinkedIn, and within your chosen industry, which is publishing. And I saw that, I was like, that's great. Top 12%. I don't think I've ever been top 12% in any academic career or business that I've ever been in. I just don't know what that means. I know it's important. I know it's means something to LinkedIn. I'm like, okay, so how does what I do as a ghostwriter, content creator, and what LinkedIn does, how can I make those two meet? And is social selling index kind of that key there?
I don't know, Carl. To be honest with you, obviously I have a premium account because my
Mm,
whole business relies on LinkedIn, and Sales Navigator is a big part of my business. And my SSI score, varies from literally day to day. It could be 81
mm,
today, 87 tomorrow. Like, it's just really ridiculous. But that's the average. I actually don't use that as my benchmark at all. What I use
mm,
as my benchmark is how many qualified leads did I generate today from my post. That's my benchmark, because my purpose for being on LinkedIn has two folds. One is I want to serve my network first and foremost and provide them unbelievable value, and second is to generate qualified leads on a day-to-day basis so I can get people into my funnel. Okay, and that's how I start my process. So SSI means nothing to me if I can't actually commercialize the time that I spend on LinkedIn. People talk about, I'm there to build a community. I'm not there to build any community. I'm there to build a specific community. Okay, so I'm very clear on what that community looks like, because I can only serve a specific type of person. I'm not touchy-feely on LinkedIn. I don't do the whole, hey, here's my cat and my dog and my kids screaming in the background. It's not me. I don't, curate third-party content where there's, just for eyeballs. I don't do that either. Everything that I post on LinkedIn has purpose. It's been thought through. I'm really understanding what the pain points are of my target audience, and I'm constantly trying to provide value. And that for me is a very, very critical part of my strategy. But for me, the SSI score means nothing if I'm not actually able to monetize the time that I spend on the platform. And the same with Instagram as well.
Sure. True. You're also the second person who's told me that. Ben Baker, I think I'd mentioned it to him. I'm like, I don't know what this means. He goes, I don't care what it means either.
Yeah, right, me too, Carl. I'm the same. It's just like care factor 0. It means nothing.
So that's an important metric too. Care factor 0.
Yeah, right.
Pay
Correct.
attention to the care factor. There you go. So you say you're getting your qualified leads on LinkedIn and Instagram, and you're helping people. You're building this specific community. I guess, do you have favorite stories of people that you've helped within your community through LinkedIn and Instagram?
Yeah, I think, well, all the people that I work with, who are my clients, this is really critical. We build strategic and deliberate planning around social selling and what their lane looks like and what their content wheel looks like. So it's not so much about storytelling. It's more about, what do you want to be known for? And let's create a strategy around what that looks like in terms of the categories that you will only talk about. One of my clients, Joshua Miller, he's an executive leadership coach, and he switched his content from, he's a brilliant writer and an unbelievable storyteller. But then once we introduced those category wheels and he started to focus on being in those lanes, his following grew 100,000 in the 6 months that we started working together, which is massive. And the reason for that is because when you are clear on what you write about and what you want to be known for, you will actually attract the right followers. And what's interesting with him is that his followers are, a lot of people that have followings on these social media platforms, if you have a look at a lot of the followers, most of them are bots. So you've got to really be careful on who's actually following you. So when he had a look at his followers, they are genuinely people on LinkedIn who are actually following his content. Why? Because number one, he stays in his lane. Number two, he's talking about very specific category. And number three, storytelling is an amazing way to get your message across. And Kyle, this actually is a fact, that it's not, most people talk about the algorithm not actually working for them, but rather against them. And I have tried and tested this over so many different types of content types. And I honestly can say to you that it all comes down to your content and the way that you tell the story. Honestly, it's got nothing to do with, how many pods you're in or no pods. It's got nothing to do with the algorithm. Honestly, it actually comes down with the type of content you produce, the way you story tell that content, and how it connects with people at an emotional level. And that's what this particular client does exceptionally well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, since you brought up story, and I love story as well. When you're putting together your content, in your daily posts and all that, how do you tell your story? Are you always kind of following a template or a formula, or is it really just, things that have happened to you? I'm like, well, I'm going to share that story today.
Most of the content that I share is really a lot of it's through experience. So, like today I did one on goal setting, but in the form of a goal board, and I talk about the power of setting micro goals, intermediate goals, and macro goals. And the reason I do that is because you and I both know, January 1, everyone's posting about set your goals for 2020. I can't tell you how much I hate that, because it is a very self-help type of a mindset. And, you know, I've been on this entrepreneurial journey now for 15 years, and I've had way more failures than successes. And that's what entrepreneurship means to me. It means more failures, and that you're prepared to accept and own and celebrate the failures, not so much the goals. The goals actually become secondary. It's actually filtering through the failures, because you're learning, you're getting feedback to make yourself better. And for me, that's been a really big learning versus what everyone else sells when it comes to goal setting. So what I did is that through my life, I realized, hey, if I can set little micro goals, that's going to give me enough evidence to be able to then set intermediate goals, which then drives me, keeps the momentum going. And then eventually macro goals is 100% connected to my big why. You know, my big why is personal. It's not necessarily professional. And so I really wanted to share that story. And that's, you know, that resonates with people, because it's a different way of presenting goal setting that, quite frankly, makes common sense. So, I also like to present, you know, the way I do things. I'm really comfortable with giving away knowledge, and a lot of people are not comfortable with that, but I'm super comfortable with that, because I think that if you're going to give value in the form of giving people an ecstatic brand experience. That's my absolute intention with every single post that I facilitate on a day-to-day basis, whether it be on Instagram or LinkedIn.
Definitely. That's a great story as well. So we with your client, Josh Miller,
Yep.
you said he's a really great storyteller. Have you had other clients where maybe storytelling was not their main strength? And if so, you know, did you, I guess, teach them storytelling, or was there some other strength that you were going to bank on as opposed to that?
Oh my God, I'm so glad you asked this question. I have a client, his name's Frank, and he is an accountant and a very successful business owner who's he's in the software game. And so he had developed this software, which was for financial reporting, complex financial reporting. And it's a very sophisticated software. And I'm thinking, how are we actually going to make this sexy on LinkedIn? Like, seriously, who wants to know about numbers and spreadsheets? Well, it's not really a spreadsheet; it is a software. Anyway, so we were in one of our strategy sessions, and he was getting quite frustrated, just purely because we were trying to figure out, you know, the approach for content writing. And he said, you know, I developed this, you know, this software. He said it all started with golf. And that in that moment, I was like, golf? Hang on a minute, let's go to golf. And and then he's like, and then I started to unpack him. I could see this whole new human being emerge with like love hearts in his eyes, this love for golf. And I said, that's how we tell the story. We go down the angle of golf, because your target audience are C-suite executives. Most of them love golf. And we are going to tell the story about numbers through your experience in golf. And you're going to use different examples. Anyway, we've evolved that now, and we've gone to a whole new level. But that, to me, storytelling and conveying a message through your passion is so relatable to your target audience. So it's just being creative and not being linear. It's really about stepping out of linear and going into, you know, a creative thinking, so that you can actually bring in a story, still conveying the message through a different format, or through a different scenario, if you will, so that people can start relating to the story.
Awesome. That's great that you found the story to work with. I'm just not a big fan of golf, so sorry. I guess I won't be sharing his excitement there. So you're in personal branding. You said you've been doing this as an entrepreneur for about 15 years. I guess, where did it start for you, personal branding? Did you know, okay, this is personal branding when you started, or was it called something else at the time?
when in year 2000, that's when I was still in corporate. I just got a new job. I was in middle management, and I had this unbelievable experience with personal branding. I realized in this very specific moment that I could raise my profile as a complex problem solver if I could solve this problem. And I did. And that's exactly what I did. I consciously made myself a brand in the IT industry because I knew that there were other vendors, IT vendors, that also had similar problems, and that I could actually I created a pull strategy, essentially making vendors want me based on the success that I was creating for the organization that I was working for. And lo and behold, 18 months later, a multinational from the US approached me, and the rest is history. And ended up becoming a senior exec in that business in a sales capacity. I converted all of my salespeople into personal brands, or specialists rather. We got rid of job titles, and we started playing with this notion of personal branding. Was it a coincidence that we were able to build that business, which was a whole new market in the Asia Pacific region, from 4 million to 54 million in 48 months with triple digit margins? Not one member of my sales team actually left the organization in the 4 years that I was running that business. And that's because my team were allowed to come to work and be their natural self. And I was really passionate about that. And HR had to work around me. I didn't want to work around HR. I flipped the whole thing. Don't get me wrong.
Sounds like a dream. Yeah.
Oh, well, I had issues there anyway, but I just didn't care because I was on a mission. I knew exactly what I was doing. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. But then what happened is in 2005, I started my own software development company. So I went completely, solo. And again, I'm like, this is a whole new industry. I don't know anyone. I'm not a specialist in this area. What do I need to do to be seen and be heard? And I got myself on the IT boards, the Digital Association, government. Like, I made sure that I was seen everywhere, and was then seen as a digital thought leader. Till this day, I still have those relationships, especially in government, where I'm still very involved in the digital landscape. So personal branding is not something that happens overnight, Kyle. This is a 20-year work in progress, and through that time period, I've been able to develop algorithms and frameworks on how to actually start this process. But as I said before, it's not just about personal branding on its own. It means nothing. If it can't be commercialized, it's just a shiny object. Fortunately for myself, I've been able to merge the three loves of my life, which is understanding personal branding at its core, understanding sales, and understanding how to build digital membership systems, which is exactly what we did in my software development company. So now I've merged the three loves of my life, and it just so happens that it can solve a huge problem for people wanting to start a coaching or consulting business. So I've converted the three loves of my life into my vocation.
Awesome. That's an amazing story.
Thank you.
Yeah, great.
The Communicate Influence podcast explores the obvious and less obvious issues and trends affecting PR, communications, and marketing. It is essential listening for individuals at the forefront of these industries. Discover the Communicate Influence podcast at communicateinfluence.com or via your favorite podcast listening app.
Would you like to be a guest on the Career Challenges podcast? Go to careerchallengespodcast.com to find out how. While you're there, check out other episodes and download them through Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Castbox, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. The Career Challenges podcast is hosted by me, Kyle Weckerly. I'm a certified professional ghostwriter who works with business thought leaders and industry experts to write polished manuscripts, assess their publishing options, and create book marketing plans. I've worked with consultants, high-ticket salespeople, coaches, speakers, C-level executives, and business owners. My authors have worked for USAA, Vistage, Booz Allen Hamilton, Austin Technology Council, and Twitch. My authors know that writing a book will help them change the world. They know that the story they tell will create that change. So they want to write a book to serve as a platform for their marketing endeavors. They know a published book will help them secure more speaking gigs, market their expertise, promote a product or service, and more. So reach out to Kyle Weckerly at weckerlywriter.com to start your publishing journey. Maybe you're not ready to start that journey just yet, but you do know that you want to write a book. So where to begin? Well, if you're ready, go to weckerlywriter.com to download 101 questions to ask before writing your book. This will help you get started and will offer guidance on the next steps to turn your ideas, experience, and actionable knowledge into a completed manuscript. Just visit weckerlywriter.com to get your free copy today. That's weckerlywriter.com. weckerlywriter.com. And now, back to the Career Challenges podcast. With personal branding and I guess how that's evolved over your experience in it, what did it look like when you started as opposed to what it looks like now, just the concept of personal branding?
Very different, like super different. Back then it was, there was, I knew what it was. I knew how to play with it. And it was more, vanity than anything else back then. It was really about, putting myself out there, walking into the room, making sure that everyone knew who I was, that making sure that everyone knew that I was the person that could solve this problem. It was different then. We didn't have social media in year 2000. So it was very much it was very personable. It was very human orientated. There was a lot of networking, a lot of functions, a lot of industry functions that I attended, but I made sure that I was everywhere. I was seen everywhere. I was actually doing no different to what I'm doing right now on LinkedIn or Instagram. It was just a different platform. But what happened for me is in year 2012, I resigned from my own company, which was a software development company. I just had enough. I really, really felt that this is not where I want to spend. This is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. Build a 7-figure business. We've worked with the biggest academic institutions in Australia. And so I ended up merging my business with a creative agency and took 12 months off, an entire 12-month sabbatical. Not only did I take that 12 months off, but I literally, and I mean literally, locked the door to the outside world, gave up all material possessions, credit cards, friends, everything. I was looking for Mary. I really needed to find who I was, and I went down that path of who am I? Like, what am I doing here? What's my purpose? I ended up engaging a mentor who was a professor in philosophy at Oxford University. I didn't want self-help. I wanted depth. And I knew that this person was a specialist in really, really old, ancient, biblical, principles. And I wanted to go down that pathway because I'd never gone down that pathway. That ended up changing the trajectory of my life because I started to understand who am I from a cellular level. That made a huge difference in my psyche. And anyway, throughout that 12-month process, he took me on this pretty profound, intense journey where I was introduced to the concept of freehand writing. And through that concept, I started to see some very profound patterns in my life. And as I was going through this process for 12 months, I started to see that, oh, wow, this is what I look like when I'm really super happy and fulfilled. And this is what I look like when I'm not fulfilled and I'm really depressed and angry and all of these things that were playing out. And then I could see what I actually look like and what things were playing out when I was in my natural state. And I took that data and then from that data, I ended up designing this unbelievable algorithm, and coming from a software development, having a software development company, I had a cognitive scientist that worked in my business, and he taught me how to actually design frameworks. So I took that information, designed this complex framework, which then became an online version of that. And now we're moving into an entire SaaS platform of that framework, which is pretty exciting. But the thing is, Carl, the thing to remember here is that everything evolves. You've got to start from somewhere. And it started for me in year 2000 when I came face to face with that opportunity, which ended up becoming my vocation. I didn't know that, but I was on top of it. It was constantly on my mind. There's something in this. It works. I'll apply it here. Let me see what happens. And because I had evidence all the time, each time I applied these principles, even at a subconscious level, I had evidence that it worked. And so now it's evolved into an actual technology, and something that I'm super proud of.
Wow. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. So you said he taught you this through through freehand writing. So I guess based on your writing, you could tell if you were super happy or angry.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Just the things, because the whole notion of freehand writing is to not think what you're writing. It's just to write. Okay. So the process was, I want you to write everything that you can remember from the age 0 to 21. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't even remember what I ate for dinner last night.
Well, there's probably going to be a couple tomes in there alone, just in those years. Yeah,
exactly. So, but you know what? It's amazing that when you actually step out of linear thinking and just give yourself full permission to go down this path of just full expression, it's amazing what comes out. And, till this day, now I journal. I call that now journaling, but it's that has really, really, really changed my life. I can't express that in enough words. I don't even know how to express in words how that's been a game changer for me till this day.
Yeah. It's amazing how words can convey so much, but still they don't do everything. And realizing those limitations, it's, part of storytelling as well. So what I find amazing here is you're talking about data and, IT and, the real analytical side of the mind. And yet you're analyzing yourself through creative expression, the freehand writing. When it was happening, I mean, were you cognizant of that the creative and the analytical were kind of meshing and not really, one end of the spectrum at all? It was just kind of one puddle?
I didn't. That's the crazy thing, that I had no concept that there were two things happening at the same time. And it was only, to be honest with you, recently that I actually realized that most of my childhood was actually spent outside of my head. Like, I spent a lot of time in my imagination rather than in real world, and which was really interesting. Yeah, so you relate to that.
Me too. Yes, me too.
Yeah. So, and you know what, Carl? Till this day, I still do that. But you see, when I went through that process with my mentor, I was actually doing that, but not realizing I was doing that. Or maybe he knew that he was taking me on that journey, but I was in some ways so desperate to get out of where I was, because I was at the lowest point of my life, and I just wanted to filter through this process to get to the version of me that I could actually like. So I didn't know that I was actually merging the left and the right together. All I knew was I was just told to do something, and I did it, and that actually transpired into answers. He knew that was going to happen. I didn't. It's not until I look back now and I think, oh, totally. I totally get, what was going on, because in many ways, it's what I do now with my clients. So it's amazing what you learn, and then how you take that knowledge, and then you can just keep on sharing it and passing it down. Only now I do it in a very different way. But it's interesting that most people that go through my personal branding algorithm, I've never not had one person that has said, I just learned so much about myself. And I think that's really, really special.
Awesome. So in a way, you're also taking them through that blending of analysis and creativity.
Correct.
Wow.
Without a doubt. That is the absolute goal. 100%.
Definitely. That's amazing. And of course, it's not the same for every person. You're not following step 1, step 2, and by the time you get to step 24, they've blended perfectly as they should.
Exactly. And they are who they are. They're not wanting to be anyone else. They are who they are. And that for me is such a huge, important outcome, because I'm only interested in working with the human. I don't care about your product. I don't care about your corporation. I just care about what you are in your natural state and how you're going to show up in the world as that natural state, because I know the power of that and what happens and transpires out of that.
Wow, that's incredible. That's just incredible. Earlier when Ronan Leonard had actually introduced you to me, he said, well, make sure you ask her about the time she met Muhammad Ali. So I need to ask you, did you actually meet Muhammad Ali?
Not only did I meet him, I sat next to him and had dinner with him. So I didn't just meet him. Now, and that's not because anything special about me, but my husband, who wasn't my husband back then, my husband was awarded as one of the top 10 Apple Masters. Apple Corporation had a program where they initiated creative masters around the world, and my husband happened to be one of those people after his company that he owned won the Sydney 2000 Olympic branding pitch. And so they did all of the branding work, the logo, the brand marks. I mean, it was a massive, massive project. And so at the 2000 Olympic Games, he was acknowledged, and they had organised a dinner with 12 other people on a big round table in a private dining room at the Opera House. And then, so my husband was invited to go there, but one person didn't show up. And they asked Richard, my husband, do you want anyone else in your organisation to come? So he said, no, my partner will come with me. And it was amazing. I sat next to Muhammad Ali. He was just unbelievable. Like, I've just never, I don't think I'll ever experience anything like that. The only other experience that I've had like that is hosting a box at the Grammys, because I work for an American company, and I remember being in the toilets with Norah Jones next to me, going, "Oh my God!" So that's the only other time. But Muhammad Ali had this energy about him, Kyle. His hands were massive, like just massive. He was really present and grounded, totally easy to understand, could converse, no problem. But just being in the presence of somebody who just was able to for me, he stood for everything that I would love to become, just pursuing your mission, leaving a legacy, being who you are, being unapologetically yourself, saying what others are not prepared to say. All the things that this man stood for is everything that I love about actually what I do when it comes to personal branding. These are all the elements that I look for in people, because that's what he was, right? He was the ultimate personal brand. So, it was very fun.
Wow, that's amazing. So we're just about out of time, but what's coming up next for you, Mary? Is there anything on the horizon that you're excited about and want to share?
I'm really excited about the launch of my SaaS platform for my personal brand. That's a tool that will be available for anyone in HR, all coaches in the executive leadership space, business coaches, people that really, really need a tool to help them unpack individuals in their natural state. I really, really am passionate about unpacking people to show what people look like as their true self, not a personality test that puts them in a box. That we've got to get away from that. We need to be dealing with people at their core level and understanding what makes people tick. If we want people to stay in our organizations and give us 150% of themselves, we need to know what makes them move and shake, and we need to know what opens their heart and their mind, not actually put them in a cubicle, give them a job description and a job title, and limit them to who they can be and what skill set they're allowed to bring in the organization. So that's the next stage for me. And we're just working on the beta version at the moment, speaking to some investors, but that will be available probably towards the end of the year as a licensed product.
Awesome. Well, that's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to that. Even though I may never use it, I'm just excited that somebody's going to try and revolutionize the HR space.
Yes, I'm trying.
I think that's great. And not that it's completely wrong. I have a friend in HR, so I feel I have to point that out.
Yes.
There are some good things. She's doing great work.
Absolutely.
It's just a lot of, old processes kind of need to be cleaned up.
Absolutely.
So, if somebody's listening to this, Mary, and they really are excited about what you're saying, especially, analysis and creativity and finding the true self, where can they find you and connect with you?
Definitely LinkedIn. So just look for Mary Henderson Coaching with a pink circle around my face and just connect with me. Or email me, mary@maryhendersoncoaching.com, or just go to my website, maryhendersoncoaching.com.
Awesome. Well, this has been very enlightening. I was worried we were going to go off on the rabbit hole here of creativity and analysis. That's something that I love talking about as well, but I'm like, we could go for hours on that topic alone. So
absolutely.
But it has been such a joy. Thank you, Mary, so much for being on the Career Challenges podcast with me today.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you for listening to the Career Challenges podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and like the Career Challenges podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Visit careerchallengespodcast.com for more information. And if you really like me, then you'll write a review. And don't forget to pick up your free copy of 101 Questions to Ask before writing your book by visiting weckerlywriter.com. That's WECKERLYWRITER.com.